Hello everyone, I'm Imelda Perez, and this is my presentation, New Voices, Storytelling and Community in the Lonely Londoners. I'll start with some background. The Lonely Londoners was written by Sam Selvin, pictured on the right, in photograph and in Google Doodle tribute form. Sam Selvin was born in Trinidad in 1923. He moved to London in 1950 for his work. The novel was published in 1956 and is considered late modernist. Also important to note is the style it's written in. Creolized English. Creolized English, which better represents the perspectives of the characters. Overview. The novel is told from the perspectives of West Indian immigrants living in London in the 1950s. This is due to the 1948 Nationality Act, which allowed Commonwealth subjects to migrate to England. It granted them citizenship, the right to work, as well as allowed them to bring their families. Some of the major themes of the novel are racism, romance, sex, immigration, and community. Today I'd like to focus on how these voices, through their stories, create a sense of community. Storytelling through the characters. Some outstanding characters in the novel are as follows. Moses, the narrator. He helps the newcomers settle in by helping them find work and a place to live. Galahad, a friend of Moses, works in a factory, has an optimistic view on life, comes to London to prosper, loves the city. Captain is an acquaintance of Moses, is sent to study but abandons it and squanders his family money. Harris, a friend of Moses, is the exemplary English gentleman. He likes to throw parties and mingle with high society. Tanti Bessie is Tolroy's aunt that comes to live with Tolroy. She is a mother figure and helps establish a credit line. These characters are just some examples of the diverse voices that make up a community in the novel. Next, I'll take a closer look at each of these characters. First off, we have Moses. Moses can be considered a pioneer, as being one of the first to immigrate to London. His name and personality is a biblical allusion to Moses. He serves as a guide to other West Indian immigrant men. He shows them the promised land. Moses questions why he does this. Jesus Christ, Moses tell Harris, a friend he have. I never see things so. I don't know these people at all. Yet they coming to me as if I some liaison officer, and I catching my arse as it is. How could I help them out? Moses is frustrated in helping the men out. He is barely able to care for himself and doesn't feel equipped to help anyone out. Yet these men come looking for him because they hear of his kindness from others. Despite his doubts, Moses helps the men out. Moses refers to himself as a welfare officer. And so, like a welfare officer, Moses is scattering the boys around London. For at this stage, Moses knows which part they will slam the door in your face. He is a welfare officer because he helps the men find a room to rent and find work. He knows the ins and outs. He's been a while in London and can easily get around. Moses does well in helping out the men, but this causes him to question his reasons for staying in London. Selvin writes, and right away in that big station he had a feeling of homesickness, and he never felt in the 9-10 years he in the country. Moses points out that he's been in London a decade. Perhaps the time, being at the station, makes him homesick. It does not suffice to have friends or a community. Moses still feels lonely. He ends the novel with this thought, as if on the surface things don't look so bad. But when you go down a little, you bounce up a kind of misery and pathos, and a frightening what? As if the boy's laughing, but they only laughing because they afraid to cry. They only laughing because to think so much about everything would be a big calamity. He enjoys the camaraderie of his friends, but by the end has come to the realization that he's not the only one feeling lonely. All the other boys, as he refers to his friends, are pretending. Pretending is better than giving way to their true feelings, because that would be a calamity. They use laughter as a disguise to the loneliness that they feel inside. Next up, there's Galahad. We meet Galahad in the beginning when Moses goes to meet him. He is also from Trinidad. At first, Galahad refuses Moses' help. He tells Moses, "Don't worry, man. I will make out for myself." Galahad tries to go and explore London on his own, but ends up getting lost. Selvin writes, "A feeling of loneliness and fright come on him all of a sudden. He forgot all the brave words he was talking to Moses, and he realized that there he is in London, and he ain't have money or work." Galahad exudes that confidence and optimism characteristic of him, but soon finds he's wrong. The big city scares him, and he needs Moses and his networking skills. Once Galahad becomes accustomed to the city, he falls for all its splendor. Galahad's way of describing the city shows this. But for all that he getting on well in the city, he had a way. Whenever he talking with the boys, he using the names of places like they mean big romance, as if to say, "I was in Oxford Street," have more prestige than if he just say, "I was up the road." He glamorizes the city in the way that he describes it because he is enamored of it. Another distinct character is Captain. He is an acquaintance of Moses. The city envelopes Captain in a different way. He gets caught up in the women and alcohol. Unlike Moses and Galahad, work means something different to Captain. Moses describes Captain. Captain was a man like that. Captain had plenty of work, but he only stayed a few days at any of them. And though he never had money in his pocket, yet he would be there with the boys, having a finger in everything. Whereas Moses and Galahad see work as a means to improve their lives, Captain doesn't like to work. He does not keep any laborer job, yet he manages to get by, whether by living off the women he dates or other means. He is just full of surprises. Cap was a feller like that, a feller that you never know what he will be doing, which part he will be, what he will say. If you hear Cap is Prime Minister of England, don't be surprised. Captain is another example of the lively characters that make up this community. Captain contrasts the immigrant narrative that Galahad and Moses present of the hard-working immigrant. Tanti Bessie. Tanti Bessie is another lively character. She's Tolroy's aunt and one of the few women with a strong presence. She creates opportunities for her community. She starts credit in a store she frequents. Selvin writes, "For it ain't have no woman like stand up and talk other people business like Tanti. And it didn't take she long to make friend and enemy with everybody in the district. She too liked the shop, and the chance to meet them other women and gossip. She become a familiar figure to everybody, and even the English people calling she Tanti. It was Tanti who caused the shopkeeper to give people credit. Tanti's reputation in the community helps her, as well as others. People are either her friends or they're scared of her. And so she uses this to take initiative and ask for credit at one of the stores that she frequents. She goes for it, and in doing so, she helps create a form of economic capital that benefits not just her, but others from the West Indian community. Harris. Harris makes his appearance in the latter part of the novel. He is also a friend of Moses. He creates social capital by throwing fetes or parties. Selvin writes, Harris is a feller who liked to play la-di-da, and he liked the English customs and thing. He does be polite and say thank you, and he does get up in the bus and the tube to let women sit down, which is a thing even the Englishman don't do. And when he dress, you think it's some Englishman going to work in the city, bowler and umbrella. Only thing, Harris face black. Harris is a gentleman by this description, even more so than an Englishman. He would fit right in. He's already accustomed himself to that life, but if only for his skin color. Harris contributes to his community by creating these social events where the men can mingle and forget their troubles, as well as expose the boys to different social circles. Conclusion. Moses introduces the reader to the various voices that make up his world. From Galahad to Tanti, the reader gains a sense of Moses' community. The novel presents many themes. The theme of community, built from each character's stories, celebrates the forms in which these characters thrive, despite being an other in 1950s London. The distinct characters create different kinds of social and economic capital that also allows their community to thrive. It is important to know that this is a partition from all the works we have read so far, and that it is the West Indian immigrant perspective as opposed to the Anglo-Saxon perspective. The depiction of each character represents something different. It is not limited to the model immigrant narrative, but rather the many distinct personalities of West Indian immigrants that simply exist and ask to have that existence acknowledged. I'd like to end by showing some pictures of London in the 50s. I looked up pictures of London of the places mentioned in the book, like Harrow Road and Notting Hill, but was unable to find any. I was able to find pictures of the busy city streets, the double-decker buses that some of these characters use to transport themselves. Like one of them describes using the double-decker bus. I believe it's Tanti. And in the next slide, there are more pictures of busy city streets, full of cars, people going about their business. And on the right, there's this picture that shows 1950s London and current London, which shows to compare and contrast the city life, which really hasn't changed much. And this is my works cited. Thank you for listening.